Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening? Welcome to another edition of The Player and the Fans. Hey, we are right back at it, and I love it. I love this podcast so much that when we record multiple days in a row, I'm really okay with it. You know what I'm saying? Hey, but I am yours truly, David Noel, the player, the coach, and we have our beautiful co-host, Miss Quierra. Miss Quierra, how you doing?
I am so excited because I want y'all to know that David loves this. When he loves it. He'll call me randomly throughout the week and just be like, bro, I love our podcast. And that'll be all he'll tell me and just hang up the phone. I'll hear it playing in the background. So it makes me happy to know that I'm in this podcast with someone who loves it as equally as much as I do. So I do. I love our podcast, and I'm even more so excited about our guests. And David does phenomenal introductions, and I can't wait to see what he has for Mr. Little.
We're gonna wait to introduce Mr. Little. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a very special guest today. But like again, just to go back to the podcast, we get a chance to just talk on here. We get a chance to express our feelings, and a lot of it is about the University of North Carolina and the basketball program there, but we also spread it throughout the ACC. And a lot of the times, you know, we get we get fan feedback. And, you know, they always tell us, hey, great job, keep doing what you're doing. So I just want to take this time right now to thank our fans, thank our listeners for always supporting us. I know the last podcast that we put out was about 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I had so many people hit me up like, yo, I listened to every bit of it.
Yes.
And I loved it. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to take this time right now to thank all of our listeners, all of our fans. We truly appreciate you. We're continuing to grow. And so we want to thank you for your support and all your admiration. And for the people who hate us too. That's okay too. We thank y'all too, because you still listening. So we good.
And I'm sure those that hate us involve some dookies in there, because I'm sure they just listen. Listen for you.
I'm sure. Well, hey, we're going to get right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. His son played at the University of North Carolina from 2018 to 2019, and his son's name was Nassir Little. Nassir Little was one of the top-ranked players to come into the University of North Carolina, and that class was powerful. Him, Kobe White. Oh, we got excited. We got excited about that class. And when they came into the University of North Carolina, mixed with Luke May and Cam Johnson, and they took us to another level. Mm-hmm. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have the pleasure and the honor of having Nassir's little dad, Mr. Harold Little, on the podcast with us today. Mr. Harold, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me, Quierra. Thank you so much.
Well, we are definitely excited to have. Go ahead, David. I see the excitement. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say to all of the listeners out there, I know we pubbed it as having Mr. Little on as well as Mr. Davis, but Mr. Davis had I don't want to call it an emergency, but RJ was flying in and he forgot to get it, so he had to go get him.
RJ was coming home, so RJ was flying into Newark, and Mr. Davis, had to go pick up RJ. So will we schedule RJ? Will we schedule RJ's dad another time? But we will be more than fulfilled with Mr. Little because we have a slew of questions that we can ask him that will definitely keep us busy. So, David, you got the floor. So just to preface it, I was gonna say, just to preface it, as always, I'm gonna ask the super emotional, loving, in-depth, caring questions, and David's gonna give you those basketball, analytical, dad-to-dad questions. So,
absolutely. And so, first off, again, Mr. Little, thank you so much for joining us again. And I want to get right to it because I know a lot of UNC fans, when Nassir came to the University of North Carolina, like fans were excited. They were like, oh my God, we got somebody who, even I was like, hey man, we got a dog. We got a dog and he coming. And, you know, in the class at the 8 miles down the road, they had a nice little class come in too. So, you know, when we got Nassir, it just kind of upped our class a little bit. So I was excited about that thing. And when Nassir got there, his struggles or his learning curve was a little bit delayed. And so I want to start off right off the bat. How was it for you as a father, watching your son grow so much through the high school ranks, get to being a McDonald's All-American, watching him perform, and then get into the University of North Carolina and having certain learning curve struggles as that?
All right. So for us, our expectations were kind of tempered, to be honest with you. I think we're kind of realistic and pragmatic about most things. So with Nassir, our thing was like, he's a kid who didn't start playing basketball until he was 13. My wife and I were both in the military. So we were living overseas, traveling a lot. And Nassir was a soccer player because prior to coming back to the States, just prior to his 13th birthday, he was playing soccer over in England. So when we got back here to the States, he was a relatively tall 13-year-old and started playing for his junior high team. And we weren't really expecting anything for him playing basketball anyway. So as he started to tell us, hey, mom, dad, I'm really interested in basketball. I think I like it. And when he started playing, they were winning. Everything he had done before then as a team sport, they were trash, you know, and no kids like to be on a team that's not good. So when he started playing basketball and they were good, he kind of took a liking to it. So as he started growing and he started kind of improving exponentially through high school based on having only played that short amount of time, it was exciting, but it was kind of like a careful excitement. You know, it's like, oh man, I'm so proud of him. But then at the same time saying, but you got to be realistic about this whole thing because of how many kids play basketball. So going through high school, watching him improve, watching him go to McDonald's, Jordan Brand, MVPs, all that good stuff. Then your expectations start to rise a little bit. But then when he gets to Carolina, it's almost like it's, I don't want to say he ran into a wall, but I think his delayed start caught up with him because then, and I'm sure you know this better than anyone, David, as you go through each level, your peers and your peer group get better. You have less, you have less people, so your talent pool is deeper. You have an enrichment of talent. So you're not the only good player there, or you're not one good player amongst only a few good players. Hell, everybody's good just about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think pairing his experience or inexperience with coming in, playing with experienced players, and then playing with a Hall of Fame coach who has a reputation for doing things a certain way and a storied program like the Tar Heels. So you take all these things and you add them together, it's going to, for Nassir as a player, it's going to create a totally new situation. But I think for us, even though he did have a sharp learning curve, I think it was good for him for his development overall because it challenged him. And I think he's a kid who needed challenging because everything came relatively easily to him before then.
Up until that point. And that's something that I definitely wanted to touch on because I used to tell my kids at Southern Durham all the time, like, once you make it to the next level, everybody is Nassir Little. Like you're Nassir Little now in high school, and you're this big fish in a little pond. But then once you go on to the next level, everybody's Nassir Little. Everybody's good. So that learning curve, I was trying to prepare my kids for on a daily basis at the high school level. So just to touch on it a little bit, and then we'll definitely let Quierra ask some of her off of the court questions. But so what went into the decision to choose the University of North Carolina? And I want you to answer this in detail because I have my own opinion about Nassir, and so I want to address it on this podcast. I've said it plenty of times before, but to have you on here to kind of, you know, enlighten me a little bit, I just think I think it's gonna hit a little bit different this time. So tell me what went into your or I don't even know if you necessarily played a part into him going to the University of North Carolina, but what went into his decision to go to the University of North Carolina?
Right, absolutely. As we touched on before we even came on to, you know, start recording for the podcast, Carolina pretty much born and bred. And in my experiences with North Carolina, for the most part, you got a little bit of state fans sprinkled in here and there. But you're either a Duke fan or you're either a Duke fan or a Carolina fan. And I think the vast majority of the people in the eastern part of North Carolina are UNC fans. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a familial tradition of UNC. My mother, my father, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, everybody is a Carolina fan. Maybe one or two, you know, off-kilter Duke fans in the little family, but they still are all right because they're my family, but I'll give them a pass. So, you know, even coming up, Nassir watched me watch Carolina. You know what I'm saying? If I had access to it, I was watching Carolina play. And him being who he is and being his dad's son was right there with me. So I think it was kind of one of those things where it was kind of like an unconscious decision for him. You know what I'm saying? Where, oh, I like Carolina, my dad likes Carolina, you know, I like Carolina. So that's one part of it, all right? Just the tradition of the family. Everything else it's not binary, it's not octal, it's kind of hexadecimal. So all these little things played a part in it. So one of the things that played a part in it is his whole recruitment process. Carolina's recruitment pitch was one of the best. Out of the 42 offers that Nassir got for D1 schools, Carolina's presentation during the recruitment was one of the best. So there's that part. And that's relative to the other 4 teams that were in his top 5. Carolina just had one of the best presentations. The chances for being a winning team played a big part. And he knew that in the past that there had been smatterings of Carolina struggling, but it wasn't long term. It might be a one-off here, like I point him, and this is not to be pejorative at all, but you kind of point to the Matt Doherty era at Carolina, right? And he and I actually talked about that. So it's just a small slice of time for a long history for a program that only had these small struggles, right? So that was a part of it. Now, the major part, which I'm pretty sure that I think you may have been hitting at, was also during that time in 2017, September 2017, the FBI investigation and everything that came out in that whole thing. So within Nassir's top 5, there were 2 teams that were implicated in that whole thing for that FBI investigation. So for me as a father, I wasn't trying to make a decision for him, but to give him more of like a big picture outlook, to say you can't only think about going to school, you have to take the wide angle view and look at everything that's in front of you and everything that would be associated with it. And what are some of the possible negative things that could come out if you attend one of these institutions, right? So that was a major part. So with those schools being implicated in the FBI investigation, they were disqualified, right?
Yeah, cut the list down.
Right. So now you're down from 5 to 3, right?
Right.
The final 3 was, and this is in no particular order: Carolina, Georgia Tech, and Duke, right? I'm gonna tell you straight up, he was never going to Duke. All right. The inclusion of Duke was more of like a ego clout thing amongst the peers, as a quiet way of saying to all the peers in the class group, like, you MFs know that I can go to Duke if I want to, right?
Right. Yeah, I get it.
So
that Duke offer holds some weight.
Right. So now you come down to Georgia Tech and Carolina. And I'm not laughing at Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech just didn't have the pedigree that Carolina had.
Yeah.
So it came down to the pedigree between those two schools. And it was a bare knuckle fight that Carolina just pummeled Georgia Tech, and they stood they had a little bit of a chance. All right, they had a little bit of a chance because they had a Black coach there that we were very fond of. Right, we were very, very fond of, and one of the things that made us want to consider going there is that the Black coach who was there at the time, and I'll say his name is Darryl LeBerry, who was recruiting. He was Nas's recruiter, and I think it would have been kind of a good thing for him to get a pull of a recruit like Nas, and it would have given him some leverage moving forward in the coaching world. But ultimately that didn't work out because they had some issues down there at Georgia Tech. But I would be remiss not to add, there was another contender that wasn't a top 5 that was in consideration, and that was Florida State. All right. I mean,
I would have liked that, honestly. I would have liked to see Nas under Coach Ham.
And not so much Coach Ham, but Coach Young, CY. CY was Nas's recruiter. So there was some consideration about going to Florida State, but being principled, I said Florida State wasn't in your top 5. And it almost makes you look like a liar if you go to Florida State and they weren't in your top 5, because that says your top 5 wasn't your top 5.
Right.
So it came down to a matter of principle. And I'm not perfect, and I got a lot of things wrong with me, but I try my best to be a principled man. And I try to pass that on to my son as well. So it came down to that, an integrity and principle thing. And that's kind of how Carolina went out. Now, do you want some really good scoop?
Just give us a scoop. We'll start right here. Give us a scoop.
All right. So that was the nuts and bolts of him ending up at Carolina. However, and like I told Quierra, it's the first time I'm ever saying this publicly. You guys are getting a scoop on this.
Let's go. The plan is the scoop, baby.
All right. Nassir was originally going to Arizona.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
But they were implicated.
They were implicated, yes. But they were implicated in the FBI thing. I mean, so a week before that information came out, we were at Carolina the week before on his official visit, the week before that information came out about the FBI stuff. So it was going to be 3 official visits: Georgia Tech, Carolina, and Arizona. He wasn't going to do official visits to Duke. You know what I'm saying? He was not going to do an official visit to Duke. He just wasn't going to do it. And obviously Miami, we had gone down there a couple of times, and they were implicated. So he never got a chance to do that because of the hurricane and everything that happened at the time. So when Arizona came to visit us, he was just like, the things they were saying are the things that any recruit wants to hear. And it sounded good. It sounded really good. And to be honest with you, I believed him and he believed him. And he was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Along with the class they had going down there, to include Javon Quinterly, Sharif O'Neal, Bol, and then the point guard who went there, Williams kid. So that was going to be the squad, because what's the kid's name? Emmanuel. He had an African name. I can't remember his last name right now, but his first name was Emmanuel. he had transferred, opening up that slot for Nas to come in at the 3. So, you know, it was all set up. And then, so it was Carolina, it was Arizona first pick, Carolina second pick, Miami third pick, Georgia Tech fourth. So that's how it all fleshed out in the end, you know. But he was originally going to commit to Arizona.
That makes sense. And then it also helps me to understand a little bit better. And here's why I say that. I never thought Nassir should have came to North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That might be your first time hearing this.
Okay.
I never thought that Nassir should have came to the University of North Carolina. But here's why. I did not think his struggles, I felt like, were based off of him learning the game, but also the way that the University of North Carolina played it there in totality, how they played all year, or not all year, like throughout history, like since Coach Smith to Coach Guthers to Coach Doherty to Coach Williams. I didn't think his game fit the way that the University of North Carolina played. And here's why. Nassir Little was an attack the rim kind of guy, and also a little bit of an ISO guy. Right. And so I thought his game would fit somewhere else better. Now, mind you, as a regular fan, you are excited to get a kid like Nassir Little, top 10 recruit. Oh yeah, we got us a good one. But me, David Noel, you know, player, coach, like I was looking at his game and I'm like, this might not work for him all the way. Right. And so the adjustments that he made for it to work, I was thoroughly impressed with. Mm-hmm. And so I applauded him for his efforts to get better each and every day. And here's one thing that I always say about Coach Williams. He's able to take talent and fit it inside his system, but he also teaches them the game. And that was the one thing that I felt like Nassir got out of the University of North Carolina. He started to learn the game. And you saw it from his first game as a freshman to his last game as a freshman. He started doing things that he wasn't able to do at the very beginning, and which I think is a plus for sure. So anybody out there that's listening, this is not me bashing the University of North Carolina. This is not me bashing whatever. I am giving you the real. And I want people to take it as that. And again, this is also just my opinion. I thought that, so with Nassir Little having Arizona at the top of his list first, that makes perfect sense to me, because he would have had a chance to play his style of game. He came to the University of North Carolina and adapted his style of game, and it fit into what we already had there. And so by him doing that, I do think he grew, especially basketball IQ and all that kind of stuff. And you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like he grew as a player up here, and not necessarily skill-wise, but this up here is always where you want to grow at. And that's what Coach Williams and the University of North Carolina does, I think, better than anybody in the country.
Right. And I'll say this, if I may. I think for him, the mental growth, whether his growth there was intentional or circumstantial, the growth happened anyway.
Absolutely.
You know
Absolutely.
So I think with him also too, I think he started out hot. So he came out at Wofford at the opening game and did fairly well. Then he came out against Elon and was like, oh snap, this the kid right here. Yeah. And then as he had the ebbs and flows, I think he had some struggles with confidence. And I think when you come from a situation where you're the man, you know what I'm saying? And you can do darn near anything you want to do on the court at any time, because there's nobody as good as you, especially when you're playing in the small classifications in a big state like Florida. You know what I'm saying? So to play they were 3A at the time. So he is going to a private school down here that has 700 kids total. You know what I'm saying? So you're playing other schools in your district and your conference who are of the same ilk. So there's no small classification that's going to be able to deal with a player like Nassir Little. And you couple him on that team with other players on the front court who are 6'10", 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", 6'6". They're the biggest damn team in the classification in the state. You know what I'm saying? So so I think having to do his mental adjustments from being the man to a degree being one of the guys, right? And then you're in a situation where you're playing behind, regardless of what anyone says, an eventual North Carolina legend in Luke May for the shot, for the shot that he had against Kentucky. And then you're playing against the lottery pick, eventual lottery pick in Cam Johnson. So you're coming to this situation and it's going to be tough to get those minutes behind those types of players. And I think that was something that we didn't fully evaluate in the decision in doing that. But in no way do I want to, I'm not trying to imply that it was the wrong decision, but there could have been a better decision. And the one thing I will never do, because like I said, I try to be positive and pragmatic about things. You can never, and I hate to get all esoteric and stuff, but you can never argue with God's placement. And it was just where he was supposed to be to get to where he will eventually go. That's the way I look at it.
And Mr. Little, you're gonna have to like here on the Play and the Fan, we don't be using big words like that. So like so you know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna put it out there.
Well, we need a context clues.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna look a couple of these up, you know what I'm saying? For myself, because I want to learn too. But so I'm gonna do that. But just for the fans out there, no, you keep using your thesaurus words and stuff like that. But real quick, being serious. What advice, and then of course we'll let Quierra ask some of her, off the court questions, because I know she's over there itching, but I kind of want to I want to get through this part because I feel like this is what all Carolina fans have been wondering ever since Nassir got to the University of North Carolina, and ever since he left, and maybe some of the little comments that were made afterwards. Nobody really knew how Nassir felt, or even you from that standpoint. So I think this is clearing a lot of things up for a lot of fans, not only of the podcast but of the University of North Carolina. And this is what I would ask you: what advice, given Nassir and his position at the University of North Carolina, what he went through, what advice would you give other parents, especially right now? With the recent struggles of the University of North Carolina, with the recent quote unquote unhappiness of some of the kids, because again, your son was one of those top players who hit the wall a little bit, struggled a little bit. His learning curve was a little bit steeper than you expected, but then he was able to get out of it and turn himself into one heck of an NBA player right now. What advice would you give other parents that are kind of going through similar situations right here and right now?
Right, and that's a fair question, and my answer may surprise you. And here's the advice that I would give potential recruits for University of North Carolina and their parents. And my answer is, I don't. And the reason why I don't give them advice is because I don't want to feel like I'm responsible for shaping someone else's destiny. So when I get and I get these calls from parents all the time, and I have in the past about recruits who had Carolina in their top 5 or their final schools, right? So every time I get these calls, I initially tell them, if you're looking for me to give you a reason to go or not to go to Carolina, that's not what you're going to get from me. Everything you get from me is going to be generic and factual information. And so obviously their question is always, hey man, just you can tell me something, right? And I was like, nah, because if your kid really wants to go to North Carolina, right? And then you talk to me and I say, oh man, at Carolina, this, that, and the third, and filth, flawn, filth, and this is whatever, right? Negative stuff. Then you're gonna go back to your kid and say, no, you ain't going to Carolina. So now you done dash your kid's dreams. They end up in another situation that doesn't work out for them, right? And on the flip side of the coin, if I come in and say, oh man, Carolina was awesome, it's the best decision I could have ever made, you go to Carolina, you're gonna love it. Then they get to Carolina and they have experiences similar to what Nas had. Now they mad at me because I made Carolina sound like the Holy Grail, right?
Right.
So if I keep it generic and matter of factual things, then I can absolve myself of any accountability if something doesn't go right or if something goes wrong, right? So the things that I would tell them, I would talk about the area itself, the things that you can do there, what Carolina is going to do with regards to your physical development of your child based on the resources that they have at the University of Carolina. The state of the art stuff there is going to help get your kids' body right. The staff that does the training, because I think this is kind of outside of basketball stuff, right? It's not on the court stuff, but the training staff and your medical staff is top notch. So I would talk about those things. So if those are things that are important to you, this is what I'll tell you. I'll tell them about how the dorms are. I kept a pretty good bead on how Nassir's classes were. So I would tell them about the education. And it's no secret that getting a degree from the University of North Carolina is an awesome thing. I mean, you tell somebody you graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, you get a gold star off the bat before you open your mouth for anything else. So those are the things I would stick to. But basketball stuff, anything they ask me about Coach Williams, Coach Robinson, Coach Davis, any coach, I would say, I can't tell you that because every player's experience is going to be unique to that player. So I can't speak to it. And I left it at that.
And I absolutely applaud you for that, Mr. Little, because again, some people, can take the high road like you and other parents just can't. You know what I'm saying? So, by all means, I definitely applaud you for that. As a former player, we definitely respected what Nassir Little did at the University of North Carolina. We appreciated him for his efforts that he gave. So he's definitely family. That's not even a question. And so, and as that extends from him, it also extends to you. So again, definitely appreciate you for joining the Player and the Fan. Thank you for giving us the insight. And now we'll let Quierra jump on and ask some of her off the court questions.
Absolutely.
Get all in our fields. So my first question as a dad, at what point did you realize my child is good?
I mean, it wasn't static, you know what I'm saying? It was actually it wasn't something that we looked at as him being good at all the time. There were some times I saw him and I was like, oh, my kid is awesome. And then there were times I would see him, I was like, oh, he's all right, but I think when I kind of got like that steadfast feeling that he could do something really special with basketball to kind of help him get to a next stage, not in basketball, but in life, was his sophomore year in high school. They played a game here. There was like a holiday tournament or something in the greater Jacksonville area. And he went there and they played like a huge classification of schools. And Nassir was just out there killing. And there were like a whole bunch of coaches in there watching the game from different universities. And there's a guy that I would consider to be sort of a maven here in Florida with regards to basketball. And what's Scott's last name? I can't think of his last name, but his name is Scott. And he owns Hoop Exchange.
Mhm.
He found me after the game, and he was like, "Hey, Mr. Little, I'm telling you, this kid is good. I got all these coaches asking me about him, from this school, from that school, such and such and such." And at that moment, I said, "Okay, Nassir might be a little bit special." And I coupled that with him being like a diagnosed OCD from the time he was a kid. I'm saying? Everything had to be perfect for him. He had to do everything the same way all the time. And if he didn't, it ruined his world. And, so as a parent, you had to manage that and everything. So coupling that with him playing basketball and that 10th grade year, his sophomore year, made me say, okay, he can be special.
So I've spoken to Nas, and he was actually in our clubhouse one night, and Shamad Williams actually complimented Nas about how eloquently he speaks. Like, Nas is literally like one of the few athletes that you can talk to, and his conversation is just so deep and so genuine, and his vocabulary is very vast, a reflection of his father.
As we can see.
He's just so easy to ask a question to, and most athletes kind of give you one word question, but with Nas, he really gives you those thoughtful, in-depth answers. Who is Nas off the court? What is he as a son? Who is he as a person? And how proud of you just to see his development grow as a man and not just as an athlete.
Oh, wow. David has children, so I'm sure he can relate. I know his kids are young, but any milestone that you see your children reach is a moment of pride. And I think as they grow and become more independent and they start being who they are independent of their parents, and I can sit back and watch it, it makes me automatically proud. And it wouldn't have anything to do with basketball. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If he were to just go to college, graduate, get, being a high paying, a high paid job, whatever it may be, but just independent and growing and being a productive citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and more so than anything, but just being a person who is a good human being,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud of that with all of my children. And they are reflective of me and their mother, because I'll watch my children, how they interact with other people, and they're just good people.
Yeah.
And they hate to be assholes to people, and they hate to see people suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And they will do anything in their power to help better someone else's situation, even at their own detriment. So there's that part. And what was the other part, Quierra? I'm sorry.
You kind of pretty much answered all of it. That was a great answer to all of the questions that I asked you in that moment. But now I want to talk about you and your growth as a parent. Being a Carolina dad is not the easiest title to hold. Carolina fans are very entitled. We are. We, like David said on our past podcast, championships are our baseline. That's
right.
it for us. There's nothing else for us. How have you grown as a parent during Nassir's year at Carolina? And just being mindful of the fans and how they kind of interact. Because social media is a hell of a drug. And the people behind it, say a lot of things, and of course, they would never say it to your face, Nas's face, or any athlete's face, but they get real big on social media. So how did you grow to kind of just overcome the slick stuff that people said, and just making sure that you keep Nas's head focused on the bigger goal?
Well, I wasn't like that in the very beginning, you know what I'm saying? Because, and the thing is that I had to separate myself from myself, all right? Because as calm as I am and how thoughtful I try to be about stuff, my true nature is I say what I gotta say, and if it turns into an argument, my natural inclination is I'm gonna ask you one question. Can you whoop my ass? And if you can, and if you cannot answer that question in the positive, we ain't got nothing else to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So if you ain't finna whoop my tail, we ain't arguing about nothing. Cause I don't argue with people. I don't. I just don't do that. You know
You
what
would
I'm
be
saying?
Jawad Williams' best friend.
Listen, what day?
Hey, I'm telling you that. That's why. Why I say, I'm gonna ask you one thing. What does that mean? That's why I think. What you say? Like say
Right.
it like how you want to really say it. That's why one thing, and then after that is whatever you want to do.
Right. So there's that. So Nassir would actually come to me and he was like, "Hey, Dad, you know, respectfully,
Yeah.
you know, try not to make me feel bad." He said, "Dad, you know, just don't argue with these people." He said, "You know, it's 1,000 people out there. 999 of them are saying good things, and all you pay attention to is the one person that says the bad thing." You
Hey,
know,
Nas?
right? And he said, "I know I'm your child, and your first thought is you just want to stand in front of me and take the bullets and slings and arrows for me. But Dad, I can handle it, and I need you to handle it with me." And I was like, "You got it, man. All right, bro. All right, bro. I got you." All right, bro. So then I started looking at the big picture, and I got to the point where I would still see it, and I would cuss under my breath, and then I would just leave it alone.
Right.
Then I started doing stuff like blocking words,
Yes,
blocking phrases and stuff like that, so I wouldn't see it. And now it's to the point, man, where it doesn't even mean anything to me. And I look at it as like, no matter how much negative stuff you say or what negative things you say, he's still blessed. And he's in a position where every one of those people who's out there talking trash would give a limb to be in that position.
yes.
So I just
Absolutely.
look at it like that. I say, you only saying that because he's where you wish you could be. Even if he stopped at Carolina, you wish you could have gone to Carolina and played basketball, but you couldn't. And if you did, being the person that you are, you would fail because you couldn't handle it. There's no one out there talking trash who can handle the stuff that these young men and women handle in college athletics. Nobody. It takes a special person to do that stuff. And all those young men and women are special. And that includes my son. So that's how I approach it.
So
That's great. That's great stuff. That's great stuff.
A very mature family.
No question. No question about that. No question about that. Because I ain't gonna lie to you. No. Because here's my thing, Quierra, and I don't mean to cut you off. Like some of the stuff that these fans were saying back then, man.
Yeah.
Like that like being honest, bro. That was some tough stuff. Like to sit there and have to read and I'm just a former Carolina player, and it rubbed me the wrong way. So I couldn't even think if that was my son that somebody was talking about like that, or saying little slick stuff too because of a bad game, or and like I say, we like, and I try to educate our fans too, especially on my social media, to like understand that we're people too. Like we're human. We have feelings. We have emotions. We make mistakes. We just play basketball.
Right.
And for people to feel like that they can attack us because we play a sport that they cheer for, or we play for the team that they cheer for, and we don't necessarily always live up to expectations, that's a problem for me. Like that's a real life problem for me. And so I try to educate our fans to remember that, like when they tough behind their thumbs kind of deal. So you know, and again, like Quierra said, very mature family. We thank y'all for being that mature. I ain't gonna lie to you. The Noel family. Whew.
Hey, listen,
no.
I don't think I scrubbed my social media all the way, but if you go out there, you'll find a tweet where I said, "Hey, I'm in Carolina all the time. I'll be there this weekend. I'm staying at the Sheridan in Triangle Research in room 415. When you want to do this, that's where I am.
Absolutely.
So you might see
Understand
those tweets out there.
Understand it.
So, and David, you're more than welcome to chime in on this. What is the meaning of Carolina family? That is often just the one thing that, fans say, UNC prides himself on is this is a family. At the end of the day, no matter what goes on, this is a family. What is a Carolina family mean to the Little family? And David, like I said, you're more than welcome to chime in.
And I won't chime in, but I'll add to that question.
Gotcha.
How have you experienced the Carolina family since you left?
Yes.
I think that.
So,
yeah.
So, and very recently, and I'm sure you guys probably saw this on social media, but I lost, like last weekend, I lost somebody who's very dear to me. I struggled with it heavily at the moment when I found out, and I'm still struggling with it now. But I lost a friend. I kind of put my thoughts out on Twitter about the whole thing. And my inbox, not just on the timeline, my inbox was full of Carolina fans and people who work in the media with Carolina and people I had never even met, offering me words of encouragement. Hey, is there anything that you need? What is it that I can do for you? Oh, are you going out to Missouri for the funeral? I have people out there. Talk to this person and they can help you if you get something for you, if you need anything while you're out there in Missouri. Now, this is the reach for me. I didn't go to Carolina. Mm-hmm. My son was there for a year, and with my kind of jaded vision a little bit, I think, oh man, nobody in Carolina cares about Nassir Little. You know what I'm saying? But just something relative to the world, something as insignificant as me losing someone dear to me and being sad about it, and the support that I got from Carolina fans, and dare I say, Carolina family, and what they wanted to do for me in that situation. And that's as recent as a week ago, even as of today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that people extending that to me really, really touches me. And I got some really touching messages from people, man, that just touched my heart, man. It meant the world to me, especially in those moments when I received those messages. So that's on that level as an extension for me. Now, Carolina family, in another sense, is just kind of logistical stuff for Nas navigating his world in the NBA. Now, granted, it's stuff where it's not necessarily, it's altruistic to a degree because you have a person who understands what you're going through. Oh, sorry, you need me to stop?
No, I'll tell our fans, message. Another one of the words.
Right. So Randy, you people are doing things from the kindness of their heart, but there's going to also be some benefit in it for them. So my previous job, I was working for a fuel transportation company, right? And I worked in the administrative office there, running the training program for the company. And one of the people who was doing the financial stuff for like retirement, IRAs, 401ks, and all that stuff like that, he was a Carolina grad. And he came to my office one day, and I had like a little cloth that had Little and the number 5 on it. And he came into my office and he was like, Harold Little, do you know number 5 at Carolina?
Not number 5.
Yeah, number 5. So he said number 5, right? And I said, yeah, I know him a little bit. And he said, I'm gonna go on a limb here, but how well do you know Nassir Little? And I said, well, I was there when he was born. Hell, I was there before he was born. And he was like, you're his dad? And I was like, yeah, I'm his father. And he was like, and he started kind of going crazy a little bit. And just as a person, he helped me make some very good financial decisions that are going to be beneficial to my family. And he also offered to do some stuff for Nassir, you know, financial stuff. And the guy, he's very, very good. He's very good. And just say, hey, I will do this for Nassir for free.
Aw.
You know, get Nassir set up on some financial stuff. Nassir's first year, filing taxes and stuff like that, and helping Nassir get tax shelters and stuff like that. Did that stuff for free, man.
That's
That's
awesome.
great stuff.
I mean,
That's
it's
great stuff.
to some people it's not a lot, but it's a lot.
Oh
You know
no,
what I'm saying?
that's a lot.
That is a
That's
lot.
Because trust me, you also got people out there that'll take advantage of situations like that, and that's I'm glad y'all have had great experiences, man. So yeah, shout out to all of the
and it's been
Carolina
more
fans.
than that. And it's been more than that. It's been
Mhm.
more than that. So
So, since Nassir has been in an NBA, what has that experience been like for you guys? I mean, we saw a new car, and that was
man.
exciting. Look,
bro,
Big body.
doing exceptionally well, and you know, just you can tell that he really enjoys it, and he just seeing his tweets and seeing him bonding with other NBA legends has been exciting to see, and to see his trajectory and grow. What has that experience been like to see your baby in the NBA?
you know what? Surprisingly, it really hasn't changed that much for us. I mean, granted, I think by extension, you're proud of your kid when people notice him and they know who he is and all this stuff like that. You beam with pride. But for our day-to-day machinations, nothing has changed. You know, I go to work every day. You know, I come home, you know, I got a honey-do list, and you know, nothing's really changed. You know, it's just that we try to do things, we try to carve out space that we can go see him as often as we can. But my wife works for him, so she gets to see him more than anyone. And you know, and moms, how they are with their babies.
Yes.
I mean, for her, she doesn't even call him Nassir. It's always my baby, you know.
Aww.
So so it's, you know, with that. So we just kind of go about day-to-day life and not be a hindrance to him. You know what I'm saying? We just try to make, because the NBA life is hard. Being a fan for all these years, you think it's easy living and easy going, and that jump is hard. It is a job. And basketball
24/7.
loses, boy, and basketball loses a little bit of its luster when it becomes a job.
Yeah.
And if you can continue to do it at a high level and still enjoy it when it's your job, that says a lot about you as a person.
Yeah.
So we try to behave and move in a way that's going to make it as easy as possible for him to do his job. You know what I'm saying? So whatever support that he needs, we try to give it. Now, my thing with him also is that he's so young. I didn't realize how much stuff he doesn't know. So for us, it's like we're filling in all these gaps, and you say, God, he makes all this money, but he don't know shit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we're there filling in a lot of the gaps for stuff like small stuff, like sending your clothes to the cleaners. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like little small things that he just won't pay attention to. So we try to do those types of things for him and fill in those gaps and ease him into full-fledged adulthood, because he just didn't get to experience a lot. The NBA is the first job he's ever had in his life. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he's learning all this stuff, and that's how we try to help him.
And that's amazing, because a lot of times, or even now, you see a lot of parents kind of use their kids as meal tickets, and it's just refreshing to see the Little family be an example of what it means to be a supportive family and to really support their kid. And it's just awesome to see. It really is. I do want to talk about this year was unprecedented, and Nassir came out and announced that he did have COVID and he kind of struggled with it. What was that like for you guys as a parent, and your wife works with him, and you said that she was there with him, just to know that your kid kind of was impacted by such a horrible year?
Yeah. The same time he had COVID, I had COVID.
Oh, Jesus.
So it was Nassir,
Mm.
myself, and my younger daughter. All three of us had. So we ran the spectrum of the impact of COVID. I had the most mild experience with it. So the only thing that I had, I was fatigued, headaches, and I lost my sense of smell. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have coughing and nothing with my lungs, none of that stuff. But I couldn't smell anything for 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? That's hard. That's horrible. My daughter, she was in the middle part of the spectrum where she had the runny nose, the congestion, diarrhea. She couldn't smell, nor could she taste, fatigue, headaches. So she had, just added on symptoms to what I had. Then you get to the far end of the spectrum with Nassir, where he had the body aches, he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, fevers. He had the alternating between fevers and chill. Like he would say he was deathly cold, but he had a temperature of 104, and he couldn't move. He lost 20 pounds.
Jesus.
In 3 weeks. Now I could lose the 20 pounds, but if I got to go through that to lose it, I'd rather not. You know what I'm saying, bro?
Right.
I mean, so he lost strength. He didn't really have any respiratory issues, which is a good thing. Which I think is because he has an athlete's heart and athlete's lungs, and that's what the doctors were saying was good. That athletes really don't get the respiratory effects because their hearts and their lungs are so conditioned. So he didn't have to deal with that, but everything else on the bad side of COVID, he had it. I mean, and he got to the point where he actually just said, I don't think I'm ever going to play again if I'm feeling this horrible. And he was miserable. And as a dad, man, I'm here in Florida. He and my wife were out in Portland, and I'm just getting updates every day via FaceTime, and I'm crying because there's nothing I can do. And it's just like, it's the worst feeling in the world when you have a child. And I keep saying child, but he's a grown man, he's 21. But you have your child and there's nothing you can do to make it better for them. And you're helpless. And I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? There's nothing I can do. And my wife did her best. And so what she did was, he has a really nice house out there in Portland. So he sequestered in one corner on the second level of his house, right? And my wife would just kind of take stuff in here. She would be suited up and all that good stuff like that, and take him his stuff and everything and try to get him to eat, but he couldn't hold it down. It was miserable. And when he got back on the court in January and he hit his shot, I cried because I knew what he had gone through to get there. So it was really tough, man. It was tough.
Well, to get on the lighter side, his foundation, the Nassir S. Little Youth Foundation. Tell us a little bit about that and the scholarship that had you beaming on social media.
Wow. Okay. So it's more so, again, with us, it's like any good fortune, we feel like any good fortune that we've experienced for the most part has never been on our own doing. We've had some help somewhere, whether it's been spiritually or people who are around us, right? So we took and we look back at Nassir's journey through basketball. And when you play high level travel basketball and stuff like that, it's expensive. It is very expensive. And and there were a lot of benevolent people who donated money and time to ensure that it wasn't too much of a stressor for us. Nassir's first year of playing high-level travel basketball was after his sophomore year, and he started doing a lot more cross-country travel. Our family personally spent $22,000 over a summer. That's plane tickets, in the summer, because it's plane tickets, hotel rooms, food. And after his sophomore year, Nassir went over to Europe with Adidas. And even though Adidas paid for a lot of the stuff, there was still stuff that we had to bear the cost of. So all of that stuff, man, it was like, look, we do okay. We're not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we do okay. But $22,000 is a big hit. I don't care.
Yeah.
You ain't lying.
David, you and your 63 kids.
I'd have been like, son, you ain't gonna make this one, buddy. I'm sorry, baby. You ain't. Not this one. We're gonna go every other trip.
Right. So with that, so then when he came back to his junior year, a lot of people just said, hey, we got this. Hey, we got this. Hey, don't worry about that. We got it. And Nassir said, because of those people's benevolence, they helped me get where I am. I owe it to others to do the same for someone who might be in the same position or even a worse position than we were. And that was the genesis of the foundation. But because he is fairly well-rounded, we didn't want to limit it to basketball. So he expanded it to academics, arts, whether it be performing arts or visual arts. He did the whole gamut. And so we had people from the two schools that he attended, Oakleaf, which is here in Orange Park, and OCP down in Orlando, offering these grants for students. All they had to do was apply for it, tell us what they wanted. We took it to the board. The board voted on it and said, we will award this. We will award X, Y, Z. So this year we had a budget of $50,000, right? But we only had 11 applicants, right?
Wow.
We only had 11 applicants. So everybody got approved.
That's
and whatever they asked for, they got.
That's good.
Yeah.
Special. So my last question would be, I don't know, David, do you want to ask, his assessment of this year? I feel like that's a David question.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. Well, let me ask my last question, and then you can ask about the this past season. What is next for the Little family and Nassir going forward? Whether that's professionally or personally, just what's next for you guys? Is there any projects that you're excited about? Because I kind of want to get this foundation out there, because you guys, more kids should have applied. And, I think if more people listen to this podcast, they'll definitely know next time. And you guys will have a slew of applicants.
Right. Yeah. So with that, so because we had almost $22,000 left over, right? So we're going to take that 22,000 minus the minimal operational cost that we have, and we're going to move that to next year. And our next year's budget is going to be $72,000. So now we have more resources, and hopefully we get more applicants. And I think that's because the people who were awarded grants this year are going to go back and talk about it, and everyone's going to see that they got what they were asking for. So it's going to spur more people to apply, and we want that. So it's going to be a bit more competitive for the upcoming year, you know what I'm saying? So we're looking forward to that. I think for the family, my goal is, I think we're at a point, and for me and my wife, we're at a point financially where I can stop working and I can work full time for Nassir. So that's the goal with that. That I will stop working for the man and work for my family. You know what I'm saying? So that's the goal. So I've given
forward the legacy.
Yeah, exactly. So I've given myself until the summer of 2023 is what I've given myself. So I'm going to work for 2 more years. You know what I'm saying? And you know, that'll put me at the right age of 52. Yeah, and then I just want to be able to, if I'm going to expend all this energy and get mad about stuff or get excited about stuff or passionate about stuff, it might as well be for my family and start giving my energy to people who don't really, in the grand scheme of things, don't care anything about me. So that's the goal. So.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Little, man, listen, this has been one heck of a podcast, and we definitely appreciate you opening up like your feelings, your family, your son to us and our listeners. And like lastly, I'll just ask, and again, probably going back to the basketball thing. This year's North Carolina team, they had their struggles, they had their ebbs and flows. One, how much do you still watch the University of North Carolina? But two, what did you think about this year's team and kind of what they had to go through? And again, so some of what we talked about was me kind of hinting to this year's team. Your Caleb Loves, your RJ Davises, your Walker Kesslers, who had a little bit of a learning curve, especially a Caleb Love, who was in more of a situation like Nassir is. Like, what did you think about this year's team?
Right. So for me, to answer your first question, there isn't a game that was on TV that I didn't watch. And on top of that, I have the ACC basketball package. So I'm watching every game if I'm home. You know, if I wasn't doing something, I watched every game. But the one thing that I did do is that I kind of fused the previous season, the 2019-2020 season, with the most recent season. So I kind of merged them together because the 2019-2020 season was so janky, man. I just couldn't get I couldn't get a bead on it. You know what I'm saying? So I couldn't even look at it as a real season. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I did a carryover to the most recent season. My thing was I kind of looked at it from I started kind of not necessarily judging, but kind of assessing the season when Smith's ACC basketball magazine came out, and I started looking at all the preseason selections and stuff like that, particularly looking at what they were saying about Carolina players, right? So when I looked at that, the first thing that drew my attention was Garrison Brooks, right? So I started with Garrison Brooks, and I said, all right, so you got Garrison, who's going to be coming out, and he is being posited as the centerpiece for this Carolina team, right? So then I looked at that and I said, so looking at Garrison being the centerpiece for this Carolina team, what is that going to mean for his co-post player and then the players on the wings, based on what their capabilities are and all that type of stuff like that. So then as I started to break it down, I just said, I don't know because Garrison brings a certain skill set to the squad, being undersized. So his heart is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But now you come into the season as being as the first guy on the scouting report. So I didn't know how he would respond to being the first guy on the scouting report. And I immediately felt that might be a little detrimental to the team concept, because now he's not going to be able to do what he did the previous year because everybody's focusing on him. So with that being the key, now that's going to call for Armando, right, who's an experienced player, Dayron, and what I thought was going to be Sterling and then Walker, right?
Mhm.
I thought that was going to be the depth for the front court. You know what I'm saying? You know, but that wasn't the case. So I thought that Armando was probably going to have to be, I want to choose the right words because I don't want to sound like I'm being negative, but I thought that he would have to be more aggressive on a more consistent basis. You know,
Mhm.
is what I thought that he would have to do for them to have success with the system that Coach Williams runs for the two bigs. I don't necessarily think that he did that all the time. And I think that he had to find external motivation more frequently than he should have, you know?
That was the theme of this year's team. This team had to do that quite often this year, call on external motivation to like each player, it seemed like it's never seemed like anybody came out or we never came out as a team like for everybody ready to punch somebody in the mouth. Like it was, all right, one person might come out this game, the other person might come out next game, but everybody had to find that external motivation. And I think that's what was kind of detrimental to our season this year.
Right. And I thought Playtech was going to play a bigger role with outside shooting, but I was so busy looking at Playtech to be the outside shooting force, I didn't even pay attention to Curran Walton, what he was going to do. That kid, I like him.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot. So
he was definitely a diamond in the rough. Definitely got to get better defensively, which he did throughout the course of the season. But I think Kerwin Walton, if he can continue to, if he can start to be able to put the ball on the floor a little bit better, his handle gets a little tighter, Kerwin Walton can be really, really dangerous for the University of North Carolina.
Right. And I'm thinking also too, that point guard who is not necessarily a scoring point guard, but a point guard who's a distributor and sees the floor and create opportunities for the other players on the floor. I think that's going to be key.
Yeah. Well, that is it.
I think RJ Davis can take that over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they might, but he can score too. And I think this year they needed his scoring. They needed his scoring. And you know.
Yep, agreed.
Well, David, that's it for me. Let Mr. Little go and organize his vinyls.
Nassir getting ready to play, so I'm gonna go watch the game.
Oh, okay. Watch his baby play. Who is Portland versus who?
Orlando.
Portland versus Orlando, aka Duke South.
Yes.
All right, yeah. We want to thank our sponsors, R. Lamar of R. Lamar Clothing and Vito of My Canvas on Tees. We want to thank them for being phenomenal.
Vito!
And supporting our podcast. But and Mr. Little, you're one of my favorite Carolina parents. You are definitely top two, and you're not number two. I am incredibly grateful for your knowledge and your consistent support. I can always look to you to, provide some insight or, just help me understand things better. And you're just always available. And that's very important to me in my career. So thank you 10 times over for being a sounding grace. So thank you a million times. Yeah.
Right. And I give Starbucks gifts too.
Yes. Plenty of iced coffees.
So just thank you guys so much. At any time, and I know it seems like not necessarily things people want to say, but if there's anything I can do to help anybody who's melanated get any leverage in anything, I'm gonna do it.
Without further ado, we thank, of course, our fans for listening. And by all means, please make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms. And of course, share this podcast. Yeah, we're out.
All right.